Hi, my name's Dr. Steve Simpson and I'm an elite performance coach, which means you are just in the right place at the right time. Now, I posted over the last few months, I guess, 2 or 3 videos about bioresonance and the fact that it's something I've always been interested in for many years, and for one reason or another I've never found a way of using bioresonance equipment that was convincing. And my latest bit of kit that I've bought came with big promises. Well, I'm used to promises, as we all are, so what have I found out? Well, first of all, I better explain what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a universal law of nature, which is that things resonate with each other. An example would be if you hang 10 pendulum clocks on the same beam, sooner or later their pendulums will start swinging in synchrony with each other. Likewise, if an opera singer can hit a particular note, that will resonate with a glass of wine and the glass will shatter. And there are many other examples of this in life. But my interest is if you can somehow find an energy form that will resonate with the energy in your own body and the organs and cells in your own body, then this potentially could have beneficial effects, perhaps even healing effects. So, I've had my new machine for about 3 months. What have I found so far? Well, I've been using it every day on myself and on a few of my clients. I never use anything with others until I've thoroughly explored it myself. So there have been no side effects to report, I'm glad to say. So what about the positive things? Well, in my case, they haven't been terribly dramatic, but even so, I think they're significant. I mean, fortunately, as far as I know, I'm pretty healthy at the moment. But what has happened? Well, for about 10 years, I've had a mole on my chest, which sometimes grows a bit and then breaks apart and bleeds quite a bit, and we all know we have to be cautious about moles that grow and bleed. So I've kept this under pretty close observation. Well, within about 2 weeks of starting to use my new machine, I was in the shower one day, I washed this thing, it fell off as it has done in the past, but this time there was no bleeding because underneath the skin was pink and new. So that has disappeared. And the other thing that I noticed, which I guess is more verifiable, I've never mentioned it before, but for the last 3 years I've been troubled with a skin condition on my face. And it's probably because I've spent most of my career in the tropics and I've had too much sun, and now I'm paying a price for it. So it wasn't serious, but it was sometimes itchy and it was sometimes painful and sore, and it was also a little bit unsightly. Well, I tried everything on this. I'd even used steroid creams, which I don't really like using, but I'd tried pretty much everything. Well, after about 6 weeks, this started to get better, and it is now largely gone, as you can tell from the difference in my face now and in a few months ago. And what else has changed? Well, you will know that I'm a fan of the benefits of meditation, and I meditate every day, and I have done since the age of about 21. And the last 6 years I've been experimenting with HeartMath. I have their software on my computer, and I get a graph and printouts of what they call heart rate variability. And heart rate variability is another measure of the depth of meditation. And I can say that I'm posting personal best scores now, almost on a daily basis. And what's different is that even if I have a bad day, the score is very much higher. There isn't the degree of variance that there was before. So some things happening there could be due to something else, of course. All of these things could be due to something else. But I think there's enough here to certainly make me continue using my machine. And the other thing that I've noticed, which again may be unrelated, is that I don't think my creativity has ever been higher than it is right now. And the work that I'm doing with clients is taking us all to a next level that I didn't know was there. And perhaps that's because I'm getting more experience, but I need to, because the kind of people who come to me have, generally speaking, been pretty much everywhere else. So this is a big bonus for me and hopefully for my clients too. Well, it can be measured in one, because he's a professional poker player, and 2 days after using the equipment on him, he went out and came third in a competition and won $15,000, which was very nice for him too. Now, what about other clients that I've been sharing my equipment with? Well, one is a man I've known for probably more than 10 years, and the last few years, last perhaps 8 years, he has suffered from Parkinson's disease. Now, he's one of these people who's a fighter, and he won't just accept a disease because his doctor says he has to learn to live with it. So he has done an enormous amount of research on Parkinson's disease, what causes it, and what the possible alternative treatments might be, because modern medicine, sadly, at the moment, has nothing. And the general course of Parkinson's disease is a decline in the function of the person, and it might be slow or it might be very rapid on occasions. Well, during this time, this man his condition has hardly worsened, but it definitely has a little bit, I would imagine, because of all the things that he's been doing. But he had 2 treatments with me recently, and after the first one, he'd had terrible sciatica for a couple of weeks or so and really hadn't been able to walk. And the chair that I have in my study where I am at the moment is not really very suitable. It's a very low chair, and I actually had to help him into it. And at the end of the session, which was about 30 minutes later, I said, well, we've finished now. I hope you feel good from that. I'll give you a hand. Before I could reach him, he had jumped out of that chair. And I didn't say anything. I didn't want to tempt the gods in any way. But I had an email from him the next day, and he said he hasn't had any pain since and is now taking exercise as he normally does, which involves a lot of walking. And then after a second treatment, it was perhaps less dramatic, but again, I didn't know this until afterwards, but he'd had a lot of stiffness in one of his legs, which was limiting the things that he could do, and he'd found this stiffness and tension was greatly reduced. Another case that I had was a young man who had terrible throat pain, so much so it reached the point where he could hardly eat or drink anything, and most of his food was taken as fluids. And it was also affecting his voice, and he could only really speak in a whisper. And once again, he'd tried everything. He'd been to all the best doctors, and they'd all done their best to try and help him, but so far none of them had come up with anything. And not surprisingly, this was beginning to affect him mentally, and he was giving up hope, and he was becoming depressed. Well, he also has had 2 treatments, and I'm still in contact with him, and this is now probably over 2 months ago. And what he has noticed is that whilst the throat pain is becoming less, which could be because of the lot of work he's doing with the dietitian, what changed pretty well, almost immediately from his first treatment with me, is that his despair was replaced with a sense of optimism, and he started exploring different ways of coming to terms with this condition that he had. He became more creative. He started writing a book. He'd never written a book before. He was keeping a daily journal. He was exercising, going out on his cycle. In other words, you could say he was starting to get his life back. Once again, I can't claim any credit for that. I can't claim that for the machine either. But something happened, and as long as something happens, we don't always need to know exactly what it is. So there's the update that I did promise you, and make of it what you will. There will be further updates, but at the moment, there's no question I'm going to carry on sitting with my machine every day. So thanks for supporting the channel. Keep firing in your ideas and comments, any other shows you'd like to have, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon. Goodbye.